The silver moon hung low over the shadow pine forest, casting ethereal light through the ancient trees that had witnessed countless battles between werewolf packs. In the heart of this mystical woodland stood the fortress of the Crimson Moon Pack, ruled by the most feared Alpha King in generations, Kieran Blackthorne. Tonight, the fortress buzzed with tension. The Alpha King lay dying. Lyra Moonwhisper pressed her face against the cold stone wall of the dungeon, listening to the chaos above. Her father, Aldric, the most renowned healer in all the supernatural realms, sat chained in the cell beside her, his once proud shoulders now bent with exhaustion and despair. "They'll come for you soon," Aldric whispered, his voice hoarse from days without proper water. "The Alpha King grows weaker by the hour. His own healers have failed him." Lyra's emerald eyes flashed with determination. At 25, she possessed healing abilities that surpassed even her father's legendary skills, though she had kept this secret hidden from the world. Her power was different, ancient, pure, and connected to the very essence of life itself. "I won't heal him while you remain imprisoned, Father," she said firmly. "He took you hostage to force my compliance. I'll make him understand that healing cannot be coerced." 3 days earlier, Alpha King Kieran's warriors had stormed their peaceful cottage on the outskirts of the Whispering Valley. They had dragged Aldric away in silver chains, leaving behind only a message: "Bring the daughter. The king requires healing." Lyra had come willingly, knowing that her father's life hung in the balance, but she had not expected to find herself imprisoned alongside him, treated like a common criminal rather than the healer they desperately needed. Heavy footsteps echoed down the stone corridor. Beta Marcus Ironwolf approached their cell, his scarred face grim with urgency. Behind him walked 3 guards, their hands resting on silver-tipped weapons. "Lyra Moonwhisper," Marcus's deep voice resonated through the dungeon. "The Alpha King summons you. His condition has worsened." Lyra stood slowly, her long auburn hair catching the torchlight. She wore a simple white dress that had somehow remained pristine despite their harsh treatment, as if her very presence purified everything around her. "I've already given my answer," she said calmly. "Release my father, and I will heal your king, not before." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You're in no position to make demands, girl. The Alpha King could have you executed for your defiance. Then he would die," Lyra replied without flinching. "And you know it. Your healers have failed. I am his only hope." The Beta studied her for a long moment, clearly torn between his loyalty to his Alpha and the practical reality of their situation. Finally, he gestured to the guards. "Bring her. Leave the old man." As they escorted her through the fortress's winding corridors, Lyra observed everything with keen eyes. The Crimson Moon Pack's stronghold was impressive. Ancient stone walls adorned with tapestries depicting legendary battles, corridors lit by enchanted torches that never dimmed, and everywhere the scent of power and dominance that marked a strong pack. They climbed a spiral staircase to the highest tower where the Alpha King's chambers awaited. 2 massive oak doors carved with the pack's crimson moon symbol stood before them. Marcus pushed them open, revealing a room that took Lyra's breath away. The chamber was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the forest. Moonlight streamed through the glass, illuminating rich furnishings and ancient artifacts. But Lyra's attention was immediately drawn to the enormous bed in the center of the room. Alpha King Kieran Blackthorne lay there, and even in his weakened state, he was magnificent. Standing 6 feet, 4 inches tall, with broad shoulders and a powerful frame, he possessed the kind of presence that commanded respect even in illness. His thick black hair was disheveled, and his usually golden eyes were dimmed with pain, but his face remained strikingly handsome, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and features that spoke of noble bloodlines. A strange silver wound marred his chest, pulsing with an unnatural darkness that made Lyra's healer instincts recoil. This was no ordinary injury. It reeked of dark magic and ancient curses. "So," Kieran's voice was weak, but still carried the authority of an alpha. "The famous healer's daughter finally graces us with her presence." Lyra approached the bed slowly, her trained eyes assessing his condition. The wound was spreading, dark veins creeping across his chest like poisonous vines. He had perhaps hours left to live. "Your Majesty," she said, inclining her head slightly, but maintaining her dignity. "I see you're in considerable pain." Kieran's lips curved into a sardonic smile. "Pain is temporary. Death, however, tends to be more permanent. I'm told you can prevent the latter." "I can," Lyra confirmed, "but I won't. Not while my father remains in your dungeons." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Even weakened, the Alpha King's fury was palpable. Several pack members who had been standing in the shadows stepped forward, their eyes glowing with protective instincts for their leader. "You dare to bargain with me?" Kieran's voice was a low growl. "I could have you torn apart for such insolence." "You could try," Lyra replied calmly, "but then you would certainly die, and your pack would be left without their alpha. Is your pride worth more than their future?" Kieran stared at her for a long moment, his golden eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her skin tingle. There was something in his gaze, surprise, perhaps even respect, that he quickly masked. "You're either very brave or very foolish, little healer." "Perhaps both," Lyra admitted. "But I'm also right. You need me more than I need you." Dr. Elena Ravencroft, the pack's head physician, stepped forward from the shadows. She was an elegant woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and intelligent grey eyes. "Your Majesty," she said urgently, "the poison is spreading faster. We have perhaps 2 hours before I die." Kieran finished bluntly. "Yes, I'm aware of my timeline, Doctor." He turned his attention back to Lyra. "Tell me, healer, what makes you so confident in your abilities? My own physicians are among the best in the supernatural world." Lyra moved closer to the bed, her healer's instincts overriding her caution. She could feel the dark energy radiating from his wound, and her power responded, yearning to cleanse the corruption. "This isn't a normal injury," she observed. "It's a curse wound, inflicted by shadow magic. The darkness is feeding on your life force, growing stronger as you grow weaker." Kieran's eyes sharpened with interest. "You can see that. My healers could only identify it as poison, because they're looking with their eyes instead of their souls," Lyra explained. "Curse wounds require more than medical knowledge. They require a connection to the ancient magics that created them. And you possess such a connection." Lyra hesitated. Revealing the true extent of her abilities would make her incredibly valuable and incredibly dangerous to possess. But looking at this proud, powerful man reduced to a shadow of himself, she felt an unexpected stirring of compassion. "I do," she admitted. "But my power comes with conditions. It cannot be forced or coerced. It must be freely given, or it will not work." Kieran laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "So, you're saying that even if I release your father, you might still choose not to heal me?" "I'm saying that healing is an act of trust. If you want my help, you must trust me, and trust begins with releasing my father." "Dewey," the Alpha King closed his eyes, and for a moment Lyra thought he might have lost consciousness. But then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus." "Yes, Alpha?" "Release the old man. Bring him here." Several pack members exchanged shocked glances. Beta Marcus looked as if he wanted to protest, but he simply nodded and left to carry out the order. "There," Kieran said, opening his eyes to meet Lyra's gaze. "Your father will be free. Now will you heal me?" Lyra felt a surge of relief, but she also sensed that this was a test. The Alpha King was not a man who showed mercy easily, and she wondered what had motivated his decision. "I will examine you properly first," she said, "and I'll need to understand how you received this wound." Kieran's expression darkened. "That's a long story, little healer, and not a pleasant one. I have time, and if I'm going to heal you, I need to understand what I'm fighting against." Before Kieran could respond, the doors burst open. Marcus returned with Aldric, who looked weak but unharmed. The elderly healer's eyes immediately found his daughter, and relief flooded his weathered features. "Lyra, my child," Aldric said, moving to her side. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, Father." She hugged him briefly, then turned back to the Alpha King. "Now, Your Majesty, tell me about this curse." Kieran struggled to sit up, wincing as the movement aggravated his wound. "3 nights ago, I was hunting alone in the Darkwood. Against my beta's advice, I might add. I encountered a witch. Not just any witch, but Morgana Shadowbane." Lyra's blood ran cold. Morgana Shadowbane was legendary among healers, a powerful sorceress who had turned to dark magic centuries ago, becoming one of the most feared beings in the supernatural world. "She offered me a bargain," Kieran continued. "Power beyond imagination in exchange for certain concessions regarding my pack's territory. When I refused, she attacked." "And the wound?" Lyra asked, though she was beginning to understand. "A cursed blade, forged from shadow and spite. She said it would ensure my death would be slow and agonizing, and that no healer would be able to save me." Lyra placed her hand gently near the wound, not quite touching, but close enough to feel its malevolent energy. The darkness recoiled from her touch, which confirmed her suspicions. "She was wrong," Lyra said quietly. "The curse can be broken, but it will require everything I have, and the process will be intense. Meaning I'll need to connect with your life force directly. It will create a temporary bond between us, allowing me to draw the curse into myself and purify it." Kieran's eyes widened slightly. "That sounds dangerous. For you." "It is," Lyra admitted. "If I'm not strong enough, the curse could consume us both." "Then why would you risk it?" Lyra met his gaze steadily. "Because it's what I do. I heal. And because—" She paused, surprised by her own honesty. "Because I don't believe anyone deserves to die from Morgana's cruelty." The Alpha King stared at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. The arrogance and suspicion were still there, but underneath, Lyra glimpsed something else. Vulnerability, perhaps even gratitude. "Very well, little healer," he said finally. "I place my life in your hands." As Lyra began to prepare for the healing ritual, she couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would change everything, not just for the Alpha King, but for herself as well. The connection required for such deep healing would reveal things about both of them that they might prefer to keep hidden. But as she looked at Kieran's pale face and felt the dark curse eating away at his life force, she knew she had no choice. Whatever the consequences, she would save him, even if it meant risking everything she held dear. The healing chamber had been prepared according to Lyra's precise instructions. Candles infused with purifying herbs created a circle of soft light around the Alpha King's bed, while protective crystals formed geometric patterns on the floor. The air hummed with ancient energy as Lyra completed the ritual preparations. "Everyone must leave," Lyra announced, her voice carrying an authority that surprised even herself. "The healing requires absolute concentration, and any disruption could be fatal for both of us." Beta Marcus stepped forward, his protective instincts clearly warring with his respect for the healer's expertise. "I cannot leave my Alpha undefended with strangers." "Marcus," Kieran's voice was weak but firm. "She's right. Go." "But Alpha—" "That's an order." Reluctantly, Marcus bowed his head and gestured for the others to follow him out. Dr. Ravencroft lingered at the doorway, her medical instincts clearly troubled by being excluded from such a critical procedure. "If anything goes wrong," she said to Lyra, "call for me immediately." Lyra nodded, understanding the woman's concern. "I will, but please trust me. This is what I was born to do." When the room finally emptied, leaving only Lyra, Kieran, and her father, the atmosphere grew heavy with anticipation. Aldric approached his daughter, his weathered hands gentle on her shoulders. "Are you certain about this, my child?" he asked quietly. "The bond you're describing, it's not something that can be easily broken once formed." Lyra looked at her father, seeing the worry in his kind eyes. "I know the risks, father, but look at him. The curse is spreading faster now. We have perhaps an hour before it reaches his heart." Kieran, who had been listening to their exchange, spoke up. "What exactly is this bond you keep mentioning?" I think I have a right to know what I'm agreeing to." Lyra moved to the side of his bed, her emerald eyes meeting his golden ones. "To heal a curse this deep, I need to connect with your life essence directly. It's called a soul bridge, a temporary merging of our spiritual energies that will allow me to draw the darkness into myself and purify it. And the risks? For you? If successful, complete healing. If it fails—" She hesitated. "If it fails, I die anyway," Kieran finished. "And for you, the curse could overwhelm me, or the bond could become permanent, linking our life forces forever." Kieran's eyes widened. "Forever? It's rare," Lyra said quickly, "but it has happened. When a healer bonds with someone whose life force is particularly strong, sometimes the connection refuses to break, and you're willing to risk that." Lyra was quiet for a moment, surprised by the question. Why was she willing to risk so much for a man she barely knew, a man who had imprisoned her and her father? "Because it's who I am," she said finally. "I cannot stand by and watch someone suffer when I have the power to help." Kieran studied her face intently. "You're either a saint or a fool, Lyra Moonwhisper." "Perhaps both," she replied with a small smile. "Now, we need to begin. The curse won't wait for us to finish our philosophical discussions." Aldric squeezed his daughter's hand one final time. "I'll be just outside the door, if you need me." "I know, Father. Thank you." When they were finally alone, Lyra began the ritual in earnest. She placed her hands just above Kieran's chest, close enough to feel the heat radiating from the cursed wound, but not quite touching. "I need you to relax completely," she instructed. "Let down all your mental barriers. The bond won't work if you're fighting it." "Easier said than done," Kieran muttered. "Alphas aren't exactly known for letting down their guard." "Then don't think of me as a potential threat. Think of me as—" She paused, searching for the right words. "As someone who wants to help you live." Something in her tone made Kieran look at her more closely. In the candlelight, her auburn hair seemed to glow with its own inner fire, and her green eyes held depths of compassion that took his breath away. There was something ethereal about her, as if she existed partially in this world and partially in some realm of pure healing light. "All right," he said quietly. "I trust you." The words surprised them both. Trust did not come easily to the Alpha King, and yet something about Lyra inspired a confidence he couldn't explain. Lyra closed her eyes and began to chant in an ancient language that predated modern werewolf packs. The words seemed to resonate in the very air around them, and Kieran felt a strange tingling sensation spreading through his body. Slowly, carefully, Lyra lowered her hands until they rested directly on his chest, just above the cursed wound. The moment her skin made contact with his, the world exploded into sensation. Kieran gasped as he felt Lyra's consciousness touch his own. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Intimate beyond physical touch, as if she were seeing directly into his soul. He felt her surprise as she encountered the full force of his alpha power, the primal strength that had made him the most feared leader in generations. But Lyra didn't recoil. Instead, she marveled at the complexity of his inner landscape. Beneath the layers of authority and controlled violence, she found unexpected depths, a fierce protectiveness for his pack, a loneliness that he had carried for years, and a capacity for love that he had buried so deeply he had forgotten it existed. "I can see you," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "All of you." Kieran felt equally exposed and amazed as her essence flowed through him. Lyra's soul was like touching pure starlight, brilliant, warm, and utterly without darkness. He sensed her power, vast and ancient, connected to forces that had existed since the beginning of time. But more than that, he felt her compassion, so deep and genuine that it brought tears to his eyes. "How are you real?" he breathed, but there was no time for answers. The curse, sensing the intrusion of Lyra's healing power, began to fight back, viciously. Dark tendrils of malevolent energy lashed out, trying to corrupt the pure connection between healer and patient. Lyra cried out as the curse's poison touched her consciousness. It was like being plunged into ice-cold hatred, every negative emotion magnified and weaponized. She felt Morgana's malice, her desire to cause suffering for its own sake, and the twisted pleasure the witch took in slow, agonizing death. "Lyra!" Kieran's voice seemed to come from very far away. Through their bond, he felt her pain as if it were his own, and his protective instincts roared to life. Without thinking, he wrapped his own life force around hers, shielding her from the worst of the curse's assault. "No!" Lyra gasped. "You'll make yourself weaker. Let me handle this." "We handle it together," Kieran said firmly. "I won't let you face this alone." Their combined strength proved more effective than either could have managed separately. Kieran's raw power provided the force needed to contain the curse, while Lyra's purifying energy slowly began to unravel its dark magic. But the process was excruciating for both of them. Through the bond, they shared not just power, but memories, emotions, and experiences. Lyra saw flashes of Kieran's life, his childhood as the heir to a powerful pack, the weight of responsibility placed on his shoulders from an early age, the battles he had fought to protect his people, and the isolation that came with absolute power. Kieran, in turn, witnessed Lyra's journey, her discovery of her unusual healing abilities as a child, the years of training with her father, the burden of carrying power that could save lives, but also made her a target for those who would exploit her gifts. "I see why you hide your true strength," Kieran said, his mental voice gentle despite the pain they were both experiencing. "People would never leave you in peace." "And I see why you keep everyone at a distance," Lyra replied. "The weight of protecting so many, it would crush most people." As they worked together to purify the curse, something unexpected began to happen. The bond between them, which should have remained purely functional, began to deepen and strengthen. Their life forces, initially just touching, began to intertwine in ways that went far beyond the requirements of the healing. "Lyra?" Kieran's voice held a note of concern. "Something's changing." She felt it too. The connection was becoming more permanent with each passing moment. Their souls were recognizing each other in a way that transcended the immediate need for healing. "I know," she whispered, "but I can't stop now. The curse is almost broken." Indeed, the dark magic was finally beginning to unravel under their combined assault. The poisonous wound on Kieran's chest grew smaller, the black veins receding as Lyra's purifying light burned away Morgana's malevolence. But as the curse weakened, the bond between them grew stronger. Kieran could feel Lyra's heartbeat as if it were his own, could sense her thoughts and emotions as clearly as his own, and she was experiencing the same overwhelming connection. "The bond," Lyra said urgently. "It's not going to break on its own." "Is that necessarily a bad thing?" Kieran asked, surprising himself with the question. Before Lyra could respond, the curse made one final desperate attempt to survive. It lashed out with all its remaining power, targeting not their bodies, but their newly formed bond, trying to corrupt the pure connection between them. "No!" Both Lyra and Kieran cried out simultaneously. Instinctively, they poured everything they had into protecting their bond. Their combined will proved stronger than Morgana's dying curse, and with a sound like breaking glass, the dark magic finally shattered completely. The cursed wound on Kieran's chest closed, leaving behind only smooth, unmarked skin. The Alpha King's color returned, his breathing deepened, and his golden eyes blazed with renewed life. But the bond between them remained, stronger than ever. Lyra collapsed forward, exhausted by the ordeal, and found herself caught in Kieran's now strong arms. They stared at each other, both feeling the permanent connection that now linked their souls. "Well," Kieran said softly, "that's unexpected." "I'm sorry," Lyra whispered. "I should have been able to control it better." "Don't apologize," Kieran said, his voice gentle. "I've never felt anything like this before. It's not unpleasant." Through their bond, Lyra could feel that he was telling the truth. The connection brought him a sense of completeness he had never known, just as it did for her. "What happens now?" she asked. Kieran smiled. and for the first time since she had met him, it was a genuine expression of warmth rather than sardonic amusement. "Now," he said, "we figure out what it means to be permanently connected to someone, together." As if summoned by some invisible signal, the door burst open and the pack members flooded in, led by a frantic Marcus and Dr. Ravencroft. They stopped short when they saw their Alpha sitting up, completely healed, with Lyra in his arms. "Alpha," Marcus said uncertainly. "Are you?" "I'm fine, Marcus. Better than fine." Kieran's eyes never left Lyra's face. "Thanks to our healer here." Dr. Ravencroft approached cautiously, her medical training overriding her amazement. "The wound, it's completely gone. How is that possible?" "Magic," Lyra said simply, finally sitting up but remaining close to Kieran. "Very old, very powerful magic." Aldric pushed through the crowd to reach his daughter. "Lyra, my child, are you hurt? I felt such energy from outside." "I'm all right, Father, just tired." But Aldric's experienced eyes noticed the way his daughter and the Alpha King looked at each other, the subtle synchronization of their breathing, the sense that they were communicating on a level beyond words. "The bond," he said quietly. "It didn't break, did it?" Lyra shook her head. "No, Father. It's permanent." A murmur went through the assembled pack members. A permanent soul bond between their Alpha and a healer was unprecedented, and the implications were staggering. Kieran stood slowly, testing his renewed strength, then offered his hand to help Lyra to her feet. The moment their skin touched, everyone in the room could feel the power that flowed between them. "My pack," Kieran said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. "I present to you Lyra Moonwhisper, the healer who saved my life. She and her father are to be treated with the highest honor and given anything they require." "Thank you," Lyra said. "But we should return to our home. We've imposed on your hospitality long enough." "Actually," Kieran said, his golden eyes twinkling with something that might have been mischief, "I'm afraid that's no longer possible." "What do you mean?" "The bond, little healer. We can't be separated by great distances without causing both of us considerable pain. You're going to have to stay here, at least until we understand this connection better." Lyra stared at him, realizing the full implications of what had happened. She had saved his life, but in doing so, she had irrevocably changed her own. "Don't look so worried," Kieran said softly, his voice meant for her ears alone. "I have a feeling this is going to be the beginning of something extraordinary." As the pack members began to disperse, chattering excitedly about the night's events, Lyra found herself wondering if the Alpha King might be right. The bond between them hummed with possibilities she had never imagined. Whatever came next, she knew her life would never be the same. 3 weeks had passed since the healing, and Lyra was beginning to understand the true complexity of her situation. The bond with Kieran had indeed proven impossible to break. Any attempt to travel more than a few miles from the fortress resulted in excruciating pain for both of them. She had effectively become a permanent resident of the Crimson Moon Pack's territory. The pack had welcomed her with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Her healing abilities had quickly become legendary among them, as she had successfully treated injuries and ailments that had plagued pack members for years. But it was her connection to their Alpha that truly fascinated and sometimes worried them. Lyra stood on the balcony of her newly assigned chambers, watching the morning training session in the courtyard below. Kieran moved among his warriors with fluid grace, his powerful form commanding respect and admiration from every pack member. Through their bond, she could feel his satisfaction at his warriors' progress, his pride in their dedication, and his constant awareness of her presence. "You're brooding again," came a familiar voice behind her. Lyra turned to see Isabella Nightshade, the pack's lead scout, and one of the few pack members who had immediately befriended her. Isabella was a striking woman in her late 20s, with silver blonde hair and piercing blue eyes that missed nothing. "I'm not brooding," Lyra protested. "I'm contemplating." "Same thing," Isabella said with a grin, joining her at the balcony railing. "You've been contemplating a lot lately. Want to talk about what's really bothering you?" Lyra sighed. Isabella had proven to be surprisingly perceptive, and lying to her felt pointless. "It's the bond," It's getting stronger every day. Is that necessarily a bad thing? From what I can see, it's making both you and the Alpha happier than either of you has been in years. It was true. Through their connection, Lyra had come to understand the depth of Kieran's previous isolation. For years, he had carried the burden of leadership alone, unable to truly connect with anyone for fear of showing weakness. The bond had given him something he had never expected to have, a true partner who understood him completely. And for Lyra, the bond had brought a sense of belonging she had never known. Her healing abilities had always set her apart from others, making genuine relationships difficult. But Kieran not only accepted her power, he celebrated it. "It's not that simple," Lyra said. "The bond is changing us both. I can feel his emotions as if they were my own, and he can sense mine. We're losing our individual identities. Or maybe you're finding a shared one," Isabella suggested. "Lyra, I've known Kieran for 10 years. I've never seen him as content as he's been these past weeks. And you're glowing with happiness, even when you're trying to convince yourself you're not." Before Lyra could respond, a commotion in the courtyard below caught their attention. A messenger had arrived, his horse lathered with sweat from hard riding. Kieran immediately broke off from training to receive the message, his expression growing grave as he read. Through their bond, Lyra felt a surge of anger and concern from him. Something was very wrong. "I have to go to him," she said, already moving toward the door. Isabella followed. "What is it? What's happened?" "I don't know yet, but it's serious." They hurried through the fortress corridors, arriving at the main hall just as Kieran finished reading the message. His golden eyes were blazing with fury, and several pack members had instinctively stepped back from him. "Alpha?" Beta Marcus approached cautiously. "What news?" Kieran's gaze found Lyra across the hall, and she felt his relief at her presence through their bond. "Morgana Shadowbane is not finished with us. She's taken hostages." "Hostages?" Dr. Ravencroft stepped forward, her face pale. "Who?" "The entire Moonlight Grove pack, 53 werewolves, including children." Kieran's voice was tight with controlled rage. "She's demanding that I surrender Lyra in exchange for their lives." A shocked silence fell over the hall. Lyra felt the blood drain from her face as the implications hit her. "She knows about the bond," she whispered. "She knows that taking me would weaken you." "Or kill us both," Kieran said grimly. "The message makes it clear that she understands the nature of our connection." Marcus stepped forward, his protective instincts evident. "Alpha, we cannot even consider." "We have to consider it," Lyra interrupted, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. 53 innocent lives are at stake." "Absolutely not," Kieran said firmly. "I won't trade your life for theirs, even if it means their deaths. Even then." The blunt honesty of his response sent a ripple of shock through the assembled pack members. Lyra felt his emotions through their bond, the genuine anguish at the thought of innocent deaths, but also his absolute refusal to lose her. "Kieran," she said softly, using his name rather than his title, "you can't mean that." "I can, and I do." He moved to her side, his hand finding hers. "Lyra, you don't understand what Morgana is capable of. If she gets her hands on you, she'll torture me for information about the bond, then kill me slowly to cause you maximum pain," Lyra finished. "I understand the risks. Then you understand why I can't let you go." Lyra looked around the hall at the faces of the pack members. She could see their conflict, loyalty to their alpha warring with their natural instinct to protect innocence. "There has to be another way," she said. "What if we could rescue them?" "Impossible," said Thomas Shadowclaw, the pack's master strategist. "Morgana has them in the cursed caverns, deep in the Darkwood. The magical protections around that place make it impregnable." "Not impregnable," corrected Elder Sarah Moonstone, the pack's oldest and wisest member. "Difficult, yes, but not impossible for someone with the right kind of power." All eyes turned to the elderly woman, who had remained silent until now. "Explain," Kieran commanded. "The cursed caverns are protected by shadow magic," Sarah said slowly. "But shadow cannot exist where there is pure light. And Lyra's healing power, she looked directly at the young woman, is the purest light magic I have ever encountered. You're suggesting she could break through Morgana's defenses? Dr. Ravencroft asked. I'm suggesting she might be the only one who could. Kieran's hand tightened on Lyra's. It's still too dangerous. Morgana would be expecting us. Not if we don't go where she expects, Lyra said, an idea beginning to form. What if we could get inside the caverns without using the main entrance? There is no other entrance, Thomas said. The caverns are sealed except for the front passage. That we know of, Lyra corrected. But what if there was a way to create one? Elder Sarah's eyes widened with understanding. The old mining tunnels. They run beneath the entire Darkwood, including under the cursed caverns. Those tunnels have been abandoned for centuries, Marcus protested. They're probably collapsed. Some might be, Lyra agreed. But if even one passage remains intact, we could use it to approach from below. Kieran was quiet for a long moment, his mind racing through possibilities. Through their bond, Lyra could feel him weighing options, calculating risks. Even if we could get inside, he said finally, Morgana would sense our presence the moment we entered her domain. Not necessarily, Lyra said. The bond between us. It's not just a connection. It's also a shield. Your strength protects me from magical attacks, and my light protects you from dark magic. Together we might be able to mask our presence long enough to reach the hostages. Might, Kieran emphasized. That's a lot of lives to risk on might. It's a lot of lives to sacrifice on certainty, Lyra countered. Kieran, if we do nothing, those people will die anyway. Morgana has no intention of letting them live, regardless of whether I surrender myself or not. Through their bond, she felt his reluctant acknowledgement of the truth. Morgana Shadowbane was not known for keeping her word, especially when it came to mercy. There's something else, Elder Sarah said quietly. Something you should know about the bond between you. Both Kieran and Lyra turned to her with sharp attention. Bonds like yours are incredibly rare, Sarah continued. They form only between souls that are perfectly matched, complementary in every way, but they also come with additional capabilities. What kind of capabilities? Lyra asked. Combined magic. When two bonded souls work together, their powers don't just add, they multiply, exponentially. You're saying we could be stronger together than either of us is alone? Kieran asked. Much stronger. Strong enough, perhaps, to challenge even someone like Morgana Shadowbane. The implications hung in the air like a challenge. Lyra felt Kieran's emotions shifting through their bond, from protective fear to calculating interest to grim determination. If we do this, he said slowly, we do it together. No heroic sacrifices, no splitting up to cover more ground. We stay together every step of the way. Agreed, Lyra said immediately, and if it looks like we're going to be captured, we retreat immediately. I won't have Morgana getting her hands on either of us. Understood. Kieran looked around the hall at his pack members. We'll need a small team, volunteers only, and only our best. Hands shot up around the room. Marcus, Isabella, Thomas, Dr. Ravencroft, nearly every capable fighter in the pack stepped forward. I'm honored by your loyalty, Kieran said, his voice thick with emotion. But this mission requires stealth above all else. Too many people will make us easier to detect. After much discussion, they settled on a team of 6, Kieran and Lyra, Marcus and Isabella for their combat skills, Thomas for his strategic mind, and Dr. Ravencroft in case medical attention was needed for the rescued hostages. When do we leave? Isabella asked. Tonight, Kieran decided. Morgana expects an answer to her demands by dawn. If we're going to do this, it has to be now. As the pack members dispersed to prepare for the mission, Lyra found herself alone with Kieran in his study. The weight of what they were about to attempt settled over them both. Are you afraid? Kieran asked softly. Lyra considered the question honestly. Terrified, she admitted, but also excited. For the first time since the bond formed, I feel like we're going to use it for something truly important. Saving innocent lives is always important, Kieran agreed. But Lyra, you need to understand, if this goes wrong, if we're captured or killed, It won't just affect us. The bond means that our fates are linked. If one of us dies, the other dies too, Lyra finished. I know, but Kieran, some things are worth the risk. He moved to her, cupping her face in his hands. You're worth any risk to me, but I need to know that you're not doing this out of some misguided sense of guilt or obligation. I'm doing this because it's right, Lyra said firmly, and because I trust you. We're stronger together than apart. Elder Sarah said so herself. Kieran smiled, the expression transforming his usually stern features. Together then, whatever comes. Together, Lyra agreed. As they prepared for what might be the most dangerous night of their lives, both of them felt the bond between them humming with anticipation. They were about to test the true limits of their connection and discover whether their combined power was enough to challenge one of the most feared beings in the supernatural world. The rescue mission would either prove their bond's strength or destroy them both. The abandoned mining tunnels beneath the Darkwood were a labyrinth of shadow and decay. Centuries of neglect had left them partially collapsed in places, while strange fungi and crystalline formations had grown in others, creating an alien landscape that seemed to exist outside of normal reality. Lyra moved carefully through the narrow passage, her hand trailing along the rough stone wall as she used her healing senses to detect the life forces of the trapped hostages somewhere above them. Behind her, Kieran's presence was a constant source of strength through their bond, his alpha senses alert for any sign of danger. How much further? Marcus whispered from behind them, his voice barely audible in the oppressive silence. We're directly beneath the caverns now, Thomas replied, consulting the ancient map they had found in the Pack's archives. But finding a way up. There, Lyra said suddenly, pointing to a section of the tunnel wall where strange symbols glowed faintly in the darkness. Those markings, they're not natural. Isabella moved closer, her scout's training evident in her careful examination of the symbols. They looked like ward markers, old ones. Morgana's work? Dr. Ravencroft asked nervously. No, Lyra said, her healing senses probing the magical emanations from the symbols. These are much older, protective wards, not offensive ones. Kieran stepped up beside her, his golden eyes studying the markings. Can you read them? Lyra placed her hand against the symbols, feeling the ancient magic respond to her touch. They're instructions. A warning about what lies above, and a way to bypass the worst of the dangers. What kind of dangers? Marcus asked. Before Lyra could answer, a low rumbling sound echoed through the tunnels. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and everyone froze as they listened to the ominous noise. Shadow wraiths, Thomas whispered, his face pale. Morgana's guardians. They're patrolling the tunnels. Through their bond, Lyra felt Kieran's protective instincts surge. His hand found hers, and immediately she felt his strength flowing into her, while her light magic wrapped around him like armor. Stay close, Kieran commanded softly, and whatever happens, don't break the circle. They formed a tight group, with Lyra and Kieran at the center, their combined power creating a subtle shield around the entire team. The shadow wraiths passed overhead, their presence like ice water in the veins, but the protective barrier held. When the danger had passed, Lyra turned her attention back to the ward symbols. There's a passage here, she said, running her hands along what appeared to be solid stone. Hidden, but I can feel the air moving behind the wall. How do we open it? Isabella asked. Lyra studied the symbols more carefully, her healing knowledge extending to ancient magical practices. It requires a specific type of energy, pure light magic, channeled through... She paused, understanding dawning. Through a bonded pair. Us, Kieran said simply. Yes. The wards were created to keep out dark magic users, but allow passage to those with pure intentions and combined strength. Kieran moved to stand behind her, his hands covering hers against the stone. What do we need to do? Channel our power together. Let the bond guide the energy flow. It was easier said than done. The bond between them was still new, and learning to consciously direct their combined power required a level of trust and synchronization they had never attempted before. Lyra closed her eyes, feeling for the rhythm of Kieran's life force through their connection. His power was like a great river, deep, strong, and constant. She let her own energy flow into that river, merging their essences until it became impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. The ward symbols blazed with brilliant light, and the stone wall simply dissolved. Where solid rock had been moments before, a narrow staircase now led upward into darkness. Incredible, Dr. Ravencroft breathed. I've never seen magic like that. Neither have I, Lyra admitted, still feeling the afterglow of their combined power. The bond is stronger than we realized. They climbed the hidden staircase in single file, emerging into a natural cavern that glowed with an eerie phosphorescent light. The air was thick with malevolent energy, and everyone could feel the oppressive weight of Morgana's dark magic pressing down on them. The hostages are close, Lyra whispered, her senses picking up the faint life forces of the imprisoned werewolves. But there are guards, lots of them. Shadow demons, Thomas identified, his strategic mind already working on the problem. At least a dozen, maybe more. Can we fight our way through? Marcus asked, his hand moving instinctively to his weapon. Not without alerting Morgana, Kieran replied. We need a distraction. Or we need to make ourselves invisible, Lyra said thoughtfully. Kieran, remember what Elder Sarah said about our combined power. What if we could extend our protective shield to cover the entire team? That would require an enormous amount of energy, he warned, but we have it. I can feel it through the bond. We have more power available than either of us ever had alone. Kieran studied her face in the dim light, seeing the determination there. All right. But if it starts to drain us too much, we retreat immediately. Agreed. Once again, they joined their power, but this time they extended it outward to encompass their entire team. The effort was immense, requiring them to maintain perfect synchronization while moving through hostile territory. They crept through the cavern system, invisible to the shadow demons that prowled the passages. The strain of maintaining the shield was enormous, and Lyra could feel sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool air. There, Isabella whispered, pointing to a large chamber ahead where flickering torchlight revealed the imprisoned werewolves. The hostages were contained within a cage of dark energy, their faces pale with fear and exhaustion. Among them, Lyra could see children clinging to their parents, and her heart ached at their obvious terror. How do we break the cage, Doctor? Ravencroft asked. The same way we opened the passage, Lyra said. Pure light magic should be able to dissolve Morgana's dark constructs. But as they approached the prison, a cold laugh echoed through the chamber. Did you really think it would be that easy? Morgana Shadowbane materialized from the shadows, her form wreathed in darkness. She was beautiful in the way that poisonous flowers are beautiful, alluring but deadly. Her black hair flowed like liquid night, and her violet eyes held depths of malice that made everyone instinctively step back. The famous bonded pair, she continued, her voice like silk over steel. How touching that you came to rescue these pathetic creatures. Release them, Morgana, Kieran commanded, his alpha authority ringing through the cavern. Your quarrel is with me. Oh, but it's not anymore, the witch replied with a smile that promised pain. You see, when you formed that precious bond of yours, you created something far more interesting than either of you realizes. What are you talking about? Lyra demanded. Your bond, my dear, is not just a connection between souls. It's a conduit to the very source of creation itself. The power flowing between you is older than werewolves, older than witches, older than most of the magic in this world. Through their bond, Lyra felt Kieran's growing alarm. This was not what they had expected to face. And you want to steal it, he said grimly. Steal it? Oh no, my dear Alpha, I want to corrupt it. Imagine what I could do with that pure power, twisted to serve darkness instead of light. I could remake the entire supernatural world in my image. That will never happen, Lyra said firmly. Won't it? Morgana gestured, and the shadow demons emerged from their hiding places, surrounding the rescue team. You're outnumbered, outmatched, and far from home. What makes you think you can stop me? This, Kieran said simply, He and Lyra joined hands, and their combined power blazed forth like a miniature sun. The shadow demons shrieked and recoiled from the pure light, while the dark energy cage holding the hostages began to crack and dissolve. But Morgana was ready for them. She raised her hands, and tendrils of shadow magic lashed out, seeking to entangle and corrupt their light. "You cannot fight darkness with light alone," she hissed. "Darkness is patient. Darkness endures. Darkness always wins in the end." "Not always," Lyra replied, her voice filled with quiet confidence. She reached deeper into the bond than she ever had before, touching not just Kieran's strength, but the very essence of what they had become together. The power that responded was unlike anything either of them had ever experienced. Vast, ancient, and absolutely pure. The light that erupted from their joined hands was blinding in its intensity. It swept through the cavern like a cleansing fire, dissolving shadow demons, shattering dark constructs, and freeing the imprisoned hostages in a matter of seconds. Morgana screamed in fury and pain as the light touched her, burning away layers of dark magic that had protected her for centuries. "This isn't over!" she shrieked as her form began to dissipate. "I will have that power. I will corrupt your precious bond." "You're welcome to try," Kieran said coldly, "but you'll find we're stronger than you think." With a final scream of rage, Morgana vanished, leaving behind only the acrid smell of burnt shadow magic. The rescued hostages stumbled forward, weak but alive. Dr. Ravencroft immediately began tending to the most injured, while Marcus and Isabella organized the evacuation. "Is everyone all right?" Lyra asked, her healer's instincts taking over despite her exhaustion from the magical battle. "Thanks to you," said Elena Moonstone, the Moonlight Grove Pack's alpha female. "We thought we were going to die in this place." "You're safe now," Kieran assured her, "but we need to get everyone out of here quickly. Morgana may return with reinforcements." As they made their way back through the tunnel system, Lyra found herself reflecting on what had happened. The power they had accessed during the fight was beyond anything she had imagined possible. "Kieran," she said quietly as they walked, "what Morgana said about our bond, do you think she was right? About it being connected to something ancient?" "I don't know," he replied honestly. "But I know that whatever we've become together, it's something worth protecting, even if it makes us targets for every dark magic user in the world." Kieran stopped walking and turned to face her, his golden eyes serious. "Lyra, from the moment I met you, I knew my life would never be the same. The bond between us isn't just about power. It's about finding the other half of my soul. Whatever dangers that brings, we'll face them together." "Together," she agreed, feeling the truth of it resonate through their connection. As they emerged from the tunnels into the pre-dawn light, carrying the rescued hostages to safety, both Lyra and Kieran knew that their battle with Morgana was far from over. The witch would return, probably with allies and a better understanding of what she was facing, but they also knew that they were no longer the same people who had entered those tunnels. Their bond had been tested in the crucible of battle and had emerged stronger than ever. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would meet them as they had met this one, together, united and unbreakable. The real test of their bond was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the rescue at the Cursed Caverns, and the supernatural world had begun to take notice of the bonded pair who had defeated Morgana Shadowbane. The Crimson Moon Pack's territory had become a sanctuary for those seeking healing, but it had also attracted unwanted attention from those who coveted their power. Lyra stood in the newly constructed healing center, a magnificent building that had been erected to accommodate the growing number of patients seeking her help. Through the large windows, she could see Kieran training with his warriors in the courtyard below, his movements fluid and powerful. Even at this distance, their bond hummed with constant awareness of each other. "The Council of Elders has requested another meeting," Isabella announced, entering the healing chamber with a stack of official-looking documents. "They want to discuss the implications of your bond for supernatural society." Lyra sighed, her hands pausing in their work of treating a young fae whose wings had been damaged in an accident. What do they want this time? The same thing everyone wants, to understand how to replicate or control what you and Kieran have. The thought made Lyra's stomach turn. Through their connection, she felt Kieran's similar distaste for the political maneuvering that had surrounded them since their victory. Their bond had become a symbol of hope for some and a source of fear for others. "They can't replicate it," Lyra said firmly, returning her attention to her patient. "Soul bonds aren't something that can be manufactured or forced. They simply are. Try telling that to the vampire covens who have been experimenting with artificial bonding rituals," Isabella said darkly, "or the witch circles that think they can harness your power through sympathetic magic." Before Lyra could respond, a wave of alarm swept through their bond. Kieran's emotions hit her like a physical blow: danger, urgency, and a fierce protective rage that made her gasp. "What is it?" Isabella asked, immediately alert. "Kieran," Lyra breathed, already moving toward the door. "Something's wrong." They rushed through the corridors of the healing center, following the pull of the bond toward the main courtyard. What they found there made Lyra's blood run cold. Kieran stood in the center of a circle of strangers, beings whose very presence made the air thick with malevolent energy. At their head was a figure Lyra recognized from ancient texts: Valdris the Corrupter, a demon lord who had been banished from the mortal realm centuries ago. "Ah, the healer arrives," Valdris said, his voice like poisoned honey. He was tall and elegant, with features that would have been beautiful if not for the absolute evil that radiated from him. "How convenient. Now we can begin." "Begin what?" Kieran demanded, his alpha power radiating outward in waves that made the lesser demons step back. "The harvest, of course," Valdris replied with a smile that revealed teeth like black diamonds. "Did you really think you could wield such power without attracting the attention of those who hunger for it?" Lyra felt the truth hit her like a physical blow. "You're working with Morgana." "Working with her? Oh, my dear child, I am so much more than that. Morgana was merely the scout, testing your defenses, learning the nature of your bond. I am the one who will claim it." "Our bond cannot be stolen," Lyra said, though she felt a chill of uncertainty. "Cannot be stolen, no," Valdris agreed, "but it can be redirected. You see, the power flowing between you is indeed ancient, as Morgana discovered. It connects to the very source of creation itself, and with the right ritual, that connection can be severed from you and bound to another." "To you," Kieran said grimly. "To me," Valdris confirmed. "Imagine it, the pure power of creation, wielded by one who understands how to use it properly. I could reshape reality itself." Around the courtyard, pack members had begun to gather, but they kept their distance. The demons surrounding Valdris were powerful, and any direct confrontation would result in massive casualties. "What do you want?" Lyra asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "You will submit to the ritual willingly," Valdris said. "In exchange, I will spare your pack and allow them to live under my protection when I ascend to rule this realm." "And if we refuse?" Valdris gestured, and suddenly the air filled with screams. All around the courtyard, pack members began to collapse, writhing in agony as dark magic invaded their bodies. Then they die, slowly and painfully, while you watch helplessly. Lyra felt Kieran's rage through their bond, a fury so intense it threatened to overwhelm her. But beneath the anger, she sensed something else, a plan forming in his tactical mind. "You have 1 minute to decide," Valdris continued. "Submit to the ritual, or watch everyone you care about suffer." "There's a third option," Kieran said quietly. "Oh? And what might that be?" "We show you what our bond can really do." Kieran reached for Lyra's hand, and the moment their fingers touched, power exploded outward from them. But this was different from their previous displays of strength. This time, they weren't just combining their individual abilities, they were accessing something far deeper. The bond between them had grown stronger over the months, fed by shared experiences, mutual trust, and a love that had developed naturally from their connection. What Valdris didn't understand was that their power wasn't just magical, it was emotional, spiritual, and absolutely unbreakable. Light erupted from their joined hands, but it wasn't the harsh, burning light they had used against Morgana. This was warm, nurturing, and filled with the essence of life itself. It swept through the courtyard like a gentle wave, and everywhere it touched, the demon lord's dark magic simply dissolved. The pack members who had been writhing in agony suddenly found relief, their pain vanishing as if it had never existed. The lesser demons shrieked and fled, unable to withstand the pure energy that flowed from the bonded pair. But Valdris himself stood firm, his power too great to be easily dismissed. "Impressive," he said, though Lyra could see strain in his perfect features. "But you cannot maintain that level of output indefinitely. When you weaken, I will take what I came for." "You're assuming we'll weaken," Lyra said, her voice filled with quiet confidence. "All power has limits, child." "Not this power," Kieran said, "because it's not really ours." Valdris frowned, clearly not understanding. "The bond doesn't make us powerful," Lyra explained, feeling the truth of it resonate through their connection. "It makes us conduits for something infinitely greater. The love, hope, and determination of everyone we've helped, everyone we've saved, everyone who believes in what we represent." As if summoned by her words, figures began to appear around the courtyard. The Moonlight Grove pack, whom they had rescued from Morgana. Healers from across the continent who had come to learn from Lyra. Supernatural beings of every description who had found hope in their story. "You cannot fight all of us," said Elena Moonstone, the Moonlight Grove Alpha, as she stepped forward with her pack behind her. "Nor should you want to," added Master Chen, an ancient vampire who had traveled from Asia to witness their bond. "What they represent is not a threat to be eliminated, but a gift to be cherished." Valdris looked around the courtyard, his confidence beginning to waver as he realized he was vastly outnumbered. But more than that, he was facing something he had never encountered before, a community united not by fear or power, but by love and mutual support. "This changes nothing," he snarled. "I will return with an army." "No," Lyra said simply. "You won't." She and Kieran stepped forward together, their combined power building to levels that made the very air shimmer with energy. But this time, they weren't preparing to attack. Instead, they were opening themselves completely to the bond, allowing it to show them what it truly was. The revelation was staggering. Their connection wasn't just between the two of them. It was part of a vast network of bonds that connected all living things. Every act of love, every moment of compassion, every choice to help rather than harm strengthened that network. "You see it now, don't you?" Elder Sarah Moonstone said, appearing beside them with a knowing smile. "The bond was never about power, it was about connection, about proving that love is stronger than fear, that unity is stronger than division." Valdris stared at them, and for the first time, Lyra saw something other than malice in his ancient eyes. She saw loneliness, isolation, and a hunger that had nothing to do with power and everything to do with the connection he had never been able to experience. "You could have this too," she said gently. "Not by taking it from others, but by opening yourself to it, by choosing love over fear." For a moment something flickered in Valdris's expression. Hope, perhaps, or longing. But then his face hardened again. "I am what I am," he said coldly, "and I do not change." "Then you will always be alone," Kieran said, not with cruelty, but with genuine sadness. Valdris looked around the courtyard one more time, seeing the faces of beings who had found something he would never understand. With a gesture of frustrated rage, he vanished, taking his remaining demons with him. The silence that followed was profound. Then, slowly, the assembled crowd began to cheer, but Lyra barely heard them. She was too overwhelmed by what she had experienced through the bond, the vast network of connections that linked all living things, the incredible power that came not from magic, but from love. "Did you feel it?" she asked Kieran softly. "I felt it," he confirmed, his voice filled with wonder. "We're not just bonded to each other, we're connected to everything. And everyone," Lyra added, looking around at the faces of those who had stood with them. "This is what we're really meant to protect. Not just our pack, not just ourselves, but the connections that make life meaningful. Elder Sarah approached them, her ancient eyes twinkling with satisfaction. "Now you understand," she said. "The bond between you was never the destination. It was the beginning of a journey toward something much greater." "What happens now?" Isabella asked, speaking for the many who had gathered to witness this moment. Kieran and Lyra looked at each other, their bond humming with shared purpose and understanding. "Now we build," Lyra said. "We create a place where all supernatural beings can come to heal, to learn, to find connection. A sanctuary," Kieran added, "not just for our pack, but for anyone who needs it." "And we teach," Lyra continued. "We show others that bonds like ours aren't about power or control, but about love and mutual support." As the crowd began to disperse, chattering excitedly about the future they had just witnessed being born, Lyra and Kieran remained in the courtyard, their hands still joined. "Are you ready for this?" Kieran asked. "Building something this big, this important?" Lyra smiled, feeling the warmth of their bond and the support of everyone around them. "With you, I'm ready for anything." "Together, then. Always together. Always," she agreed. As the sun set over the Crimson Moonpack's territory, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Lyra and Kieran stood hand in hand, surrounded by friends and allies who had become family. Their bond had been tested by dark magic and demonic power, and it had emerged stronger than ever. But more than that, it had become something greater than either of them had ever imagined. A symbol of hope, a beacon of love, and proof that even in a world filled with darkness, light would always find a way to shine. The real test of their bond hadn't been surviving Morgana's curse or defeating Valdris's army. It had been learning that true strength came not from power, but from connection, not from standing alone, but from standing together. And in that understanding they had found not just love, but purpose, not just a bond, but a destiny. Their story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The end. Important notice. This story is completely fictional and created for entertainment purposes only. All characters, events, situations, and circumstances are products of imagination and do not represent real people, living or dead, or real events. Any resemblance to actual persons or situations is purely coincidental. This fantasy story explores universal themes of love, sacrifice, the power of connection, and how true strength comes from unity rather than individual power. Through the characters of Lyra and Kieran, it shows how healing, both physical and emotional, requires trust, compassion, and the willingness to be vulnerable with another person. The supernatural elements serve as metaphors for the very real challenges we face in building meaningful relationships and communities based on mutual support rather than fear or control.